Hello everyone, how are you doing? So today we are going to talk about two philosophers who followed in the footsteps of Thales of Miletus and are in fact the only other two major philosophers of the Milesian school. Today we are talking about Anaximander and Anaximenes of Miletus. Starting off with Anaximander, who was born 610 BC in Miletus and was 1 year at least the successor of Thales of Miletus, before he died just 1 year after Thales in the year 547. Unfortunately, there is basically nothing known about his life, even though he gained some fame by actually being the first Greek philosopher to officially write down his studies. As a Milesian philosopher, he, much like Thales, was not only interested in various scientific fields, in his case physics, geometry, politics and geography, but also deeply invested in the question of the origin as well as the guiding principles or the arche of the world. And even though Thales was basically his friend and teacher, he had a very different understanding of what constitutes the arche. While Thales thought the arche to be water, Anaximander actually described it as being the so-called apeiron. Now, compared to water, the apeiron can be thought of like an infinite void. It is eternal and shapeless, and basically in a state of existence and non-existence at the same time. According to Anaximander's theory of the world, everything comes from apeiron and will eventually return to it. Now, you could argue that Anaximander was just searching for a placeholder for the arche, and I actually would be inclined to believe that, because it kinda goes completely against his teacher Thales' philosophy of observation, since the apeiron basically by definition can't be observed and there is no way to prove it even exists. Therefore, I personally would say that Anaximander's theory rests upon much speculation, which could be the case because he was actually influenced a lot by Greek mythology and the mythological concept of chaos. Anaximander's approach to the question of the arche is very theoretical and seems highly mythical compared to Thales's. Interestingly enough, he came to some fascinating conclusions and ideas that are still talked about to this day. For example, that the apeiron gives birth to an infinite amount of separate worlds or universes, which somehow also found its way into the theoretical physics of today. For example, think of the multiverse theory. Another fun little detail is that Anaximander was actually quite certain that human life, or life itself, came from the ocean. And even though I personally think that his apeiron approach is a little too theoretical, there's no doubt that Anaximander truly had a mind ahead of his time, as he was not only the first person to put forth a mechanical model of the solar system, but also a map in which he tried to depict the known world. He was and is still considered to be somewhat of a pioneer when it comes to geography, cosmology or astronomy, and cartography. Now let's move on to Anaximenes, who is often treated just as an appendix of the Milesian school, and while it is true that he doesn't have quite the resume of Thales and Anaximander, he shouldn't fade into obscurity. Anaximenes of Miletus was born 586 BC, which makes him a lot younger than Thales and Anaximander, and he is considered to be the last great philosopher of the Milesian school. And in that tradition, he completely disagreed with the opinion of both of his predecessors. As he also wanted to find the principle of the universe or the arche himself, he deemed it not to be water or the apeiron, but rather thought to have found the answer in the air. Literally. It was air. He explained his view by saying that cold air condenses into something harder while hot air disperses, and is actually the first philosopher who put forth the idea that the state of something changes by how dense the material is. Even though he got it completely mixed up because condensed air is actually quite hot, while cold air is the one that is more rarefied, but he was the one who actually first included this kind of process in his thoughts. Unfortunately, all of his writings were lost and there is not that much more known about him. However, I think he should be mentioned when talking about the Milesian school of thought, as he too did not only think about the origin or arche of the world, but also laid the foundation of the principles by which matter behaved when heated or cooled down, which was picked up by later physicists. Anaximenes died approximately 526 BC and therefore ended the Milesian school for good. But maybe we will have a closer look at other philosophical schools as well. Let's see. But until then, may the gods be with you and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.